People have been beekeeping for thousands of years. Originally, early humans would go on honey hunts to gather honey and beeswax from wild hives. Eventually, in the 1850s, a man by the name of Langstroth invented and patented an artificial hive that could be easily tended to and harvested from without harming the bees inside. This design is still used almost 200 years later. With the invention of the Langstroth hive, honey could be harvested without harming the bees, allowing beehives to be kept for years without problem. I started beekeeping back in June of 2025 when me and my dad noticed our orchard wasn't producing as much as it should have been. We noticed there just wasn't enough pollinators in the area, so with some convincing, we looked into beekeeping. I got a list made of the things we needed, and within a couple of weeks, we went from thinking beekeeping would never happen to bringing the nucleus home from the apiary. I figured out the costs, got things ordered and built, and did as much research as I could. All that was left was get the bees themselves. Packaged bees were known for up and leaving, so we had to get something called the nucleus. It was pretty late in the season, so it took us a bit of digging, but as it turns out, the beekeepers we knew still had a couple left. We were in luck. The bees they had were Italian, which are known for being docile and great for beginners. We brought a couple of transport nets, and after a little bit, we had the bees ready to go and brought back home. They're still a little angry from their trip back from California for the almonds, but other than that, they're pretty tame. The nucleus cost us about $180, but most are $250, so it was a pretty good deal. We opened up the nucleus for a little while to let the bees cool down, and after a couple of hours, we came back to bring them into their new home. Me and my dad suited up, and it was honestly pretty chaotic with all the bees flying around because they were still really kind of ticked. But now they've got stung, and we were able to, after fixing my dad's suit, get every frame and most of the bees into the hive. We then left it for a little while to let the rest of them kind of find their way in. We put the empty frames we swapped out with the nucleus frames back into the nuke, brought the nuke back to the apiary, and then a couple days later we had gone back to the hive to find the queen, which was thankfully pretty easy to do as it only inhabited a small part of the box so far. Despite having found her quickly this first time, we'd only ever seen her a couple of times since then, not realizing how elusive queens are. I made sure to check them every Saturday and would occasionally do something called checkerboarding to encourage them to move to uninhabited frames. Checkerboarding is a pretty simple process. It's just where you're going to take the frames in the middle that have comb and brood and activity on them, and you're going to move them over and put a blank one between them. The bees hate it when that happens, so they will put all of their time into building on that blank frame, and it gets them building up in the hive a lot quicker. It really saves them in the long run. They were doing pretty well for those couple of months. I had always made sure to, come out, see them, try to get familiar with them, to get used to them, and they got used to me in the process. I also fed them some low consistency sugar water to help them boost.
You're not bringing any with you, are you?
It gets pretty hot in the hive, so giving them some source of water, like this little water feeder I have here, is going to be really beneficial for them. Inspecting your hive is going to be a pretty simple process, and a lot of it you can do simultaneously. You're typically going to want to check to see how active they are, how many bees are in there, any kind of new comb they've put down, and also what the brood pattern is. Usually brood is going to be in large groups in the frames, usually towards the middle ones, and the older ones are going to probably be towards the middle, with eggs towards the outside of it. And now, interviews.
Alright, so, what were your thoughts when I first suggested we get these?
I thought, oh my god, I hope he's kidding. Seriously.
Understandable. Callie.
I told you she wants to be videoed.
Well, I'm only doing this once. Alright. How did you react? What was going on in your head when we brought the bees home?
Oh my god, they're really here. What are we in for?
And now that we've had them for a little while, what do you think of them now?
I'm more tolerant. Before, when a bee came around, I'd be like, and try to get away. Now I'm like, okay, just leave it be.
What were your thoughts when I first suggested we get bees?
I thought you were kidding. Honestly.
And then
I thought you lost your mind. But but it turns out you didn't.
and then I know I was kind of there for it, but what was your reaction when we were bringing them home? Is it, and we were the ones driving them home, so.
It didn't really bother me. It was more when we were at the farm getting them. When we first got there.
They were pretty active when we did.
They were all buzzing around all over the place, and I'm like, oh my God, here we go. This is real. That's when it set in.
Mm-hmm. I was too nervous to go to a couple of feet of them. And then, what were your thoughts on bees in general before we got them?
Didn't really care for them much, but they're a necessity, especially for us. With all the trees, the flowering trees and stuff. I knew it was a necessity.
And then, how's your opinion on them now?
It's great. So far, so good.
The bees needed a second box in about early August, and they filled that up pretty quickly thanks to what was effectively the vertical checkerboarding I did. They have slowed down quite a lot these days, and they've been mostly just packing in honey for the winter. We treated them for varroa mites, which are these annoying little blood-sucking parasites that have been a real problem. And since then, things have pretty much just been nice and slow. They haven't done much, which means no problems, thankfully. Now that we're up to speed, let's talk about the different types of bees. The ones you're seeing currently is something called a drone. They're the males, they're about twice the size of the workers, and they're very few in a hive. There's also the workers, which are what most honeybees are. They do all the jobs in the hive, they do pretty much everything. And there's also the queen. She's the mother of the entire hive and also the most important bee in the entire colony. The workers will do everything they can to protect her, and the males serve to mate with the queens of other hives to spread genetics. As a beekeeper, you're gonna make mistakes. The most common mistake you're gonna make is second guessing yourself. The best advice I can give for this is to figure out what you need to do before you do it. If you do by chance mess something up, you can always go back later and try to fix it. The most common misconception with bees and wasps is that because they can sting you, they will. As long as you're leaving them alone, not trying to hurt them, they will not care. If it helps, the queen is on that very frame you're seeing, and they don't really care that I'm right next to it. They're perfectly content with me. As far as wasps go, this is a yellow jacket. They're like the most aggressive wasps we get around here, and it's just kind of chilling on my arm there, crawling around. I did not get stung, I did not get bit, it just kind of crawled around for a while and flew off. You don't bother them, they don't bother you. Bees are an amazingly important part of our ecosystem, and they need our help. The overuse of pesticides has caused irreparable damage to both honeybees and native bees alike. The best things we can do to help them are to use organic pesticides rather than artificial ones, plant plenty of flowers for the bees to feast on, and set up something called bee hotels to help support native bee populations. By doing this, not only will you help save the bees, but the bees will also help a huge amount of the flowers and the crops all around you. You'll certainly see the difference.